Welcome back to Ray's Talk Show. This is your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. Thank you so much for joining us. Ray's Talk Show, where we talk about what you want to hear. Isn't that something? We actually have a place where we have the kind of conversations that we want to hear more online and really the kind of inspirational, whether it's talking to a community leader, an entrepreneur, an artist, a social media influencer, or someone like we have today who's really all the above, really kind of getting the information, inspiration, and building the community that'll help you soar towards your own career and personal satisfaction. Thank you so much for joining us again. And again, you can check out Ray's Talk Show anywhere. You can see a podcast, listen to a podcast, including iTunes. And now we're on Spotify. So for my music heads out there, check me out on Spotify. Y'all, we're doing really well on Spotify, and we're really honored because Spotify actually invited us to be on the platform. So that was a nice highlight over the last few weeks, and we've definitely seen our numbers reflect the additional exposure of Spotify. But whatever your listening pleasure, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Google Play, and all the Stitcher, all the above. And of course, you can check out all of our content, including our video content. We've done quite a few video shows as well, and other content at rayspodcast.com. That's RAYS podcast.com. And so I reached out to our very special guest today because she is really, as my mother would say, está en medio de todo. She's really involved in this movement, particularly from a Latina perspective, of Latinas raising their voice using these online platforms and developing platforms and businesses where we can just begin to compensate and monetize the great value that our Latina professionals bring to the landscape. The social media director of the WeAllGrow Latina Network, and of course the leader of the Art Muse Fine Art of Living blog platform, Rachel Matos. Rachel, welcome to Ray's Talk Show.
Hello, thank you for having me. This is exciting.
I'm really excited to have you here, and as we were both checking each other's bios out, we not only spent some time, I spent a little more time being born and raised there, but in Philadelphia. So good, Rachel, you have a little Philadelphia in your background. Yes. Of course, we're both Columbia University Lions. That is so exciting. So definitely want to represent for our Latino Columbia alums out there, and all Columbia University alums, including, I think the guy in the White House went to Columbia, if I'm not mistaken. I think I've heard that once or twice. So, but always great to have. Absolutely. So I was there when Lauryn Hill made her first music video on the library steps.
Yeah.
Ooh la la la. Oh yeah, there was a few historical moments there. So Rachel again.
When they what was it in Spider-Man, the older Spider-Man, when he was like on the campus, I'm like telling my son, like, I went there. I went to Spider-Man school.
Oh, I know. There's nothing more geekier than pointing out Columbia references in movies. I know my sons have gotten into the new Ghostbusters. And so now I think at some point over the summer we saw the old one on TV, and I'm like freaking out because, it's the same thing, the campus. And I'm trying to explain to them that I went to school there, and they're just looking at me like, whatever, who cares? Where's the slime? Where's the slime? That's all they want to see. So, and again, Rachel, you can check out you can check out Rachel everywhere, but in particular her blog at theartmuse.me. We're going to talk about that, and of course everything going on at the WeAllGrow Latina Network. Rachel, I wanted to start this conversation really giving people an opportunity to learn more about you. This journey, you really are one of the most, for my money, one of the most important social media influencers and Latinas in particular that are sort of building this movement of content creators online. But you didn't start there. So we wanted to get a sense from you, Rachel Matos. Where did this journey begin for you?
That kind of thing, to communicate my thoughts and my feelings all through my life, that was something that was very important to me. And my mother encouraged it. And I eventually became the art teacher, art teacher pet who would then use my skills and my drawing passion to do the decorations in the school. And it was just something that was just a part of who I was that I just loved. And I eventually ended up at the School of Visual Arts and studied illustration and arts education. And from there, I started working in the museum field as an educator, curator, lecturer, a multitude of things, because in New York City, you can do that, right? So that's how the journey of visual communication really started. I was much better at visual communication than verbal, expressing my feelings. Like if there was something bothering me, I would actually draw it out for people and say, this is what's kind of going on in my head. And when I was working for different museums, one of the the jobs that I got was at the Bronx Museum of Arts, and I was a museum educator there. And it was really interesting to kind of grow up in the Bronx and then work at a museum in the Bronx that I would always see but never really went inside. So one of the things that inspired me the most at the Bronx Museum of Arts was how everyone was so articulate and spoke so beautifully about the contemporary works that were there. And because of that experience and me wanting to just sit down and have a great conversation with everyone that was in the lunchroom, I enrolled in Columbia. And I wanted to study art history, modern art, and critical studies is what I went into. Really so that I can partake in these conversations that I found so fascinating and felt that I just didn't have enough knowledge, and I just really wanted that. So Columbia really helped me a lot, tremendously, since you went there, and I'm sure you know, the conversations there are amazing and the professors are extraordinary. And then through there, I started working at the Guggenheim as a lecturer, and things just sort of took off for me in the museum field. Fast forward, I moved to Los Angeles, and I found the museum field in Los Angeles a little bit challenging because you can't just hop on a train and, go to the Met and go to the Guggenheim and do your freelance work and go to school at night. Like, the convenience was just not there. So I started a blog. I started looking at other bloggers, reminiscing about New York, and I was like, well, this is a great way for me to start to know the museum and the art field in LA and write about it and be a part of the Los Angeles art scene culture here. And through that, I believe I met Anna first on Twitter. We were chatting about about making white rice in a pot as opposed to making it from scratch, and how awful that is as a Latina to do. And it was like this funny conversation we were all having. And
no, but that's a double-edged, Rachel, that's a double-edged sword, because then, one man's burnt rice is another man's bagao, so it all depends how you look at it,
Bagao is amazing. But you don't get that much bagao when you do it in the rice cooker. So, like, we were talking about the pros and cons of it. And then I met her at an event in person. It was an Eva Longoria screening for her documentary several years ago, and things just sort of took off. She's told me that what she liked the most about me initially was that I was not afraid to get everybody together to take a picture. I was kind of like maybe bossing everybody around to get in a picture with Eva Longoria because we couldn't miss that moment. This was like the beginning of the whole blogging thing. So it's like, wow, we got invited to this thing. Like, let's make the most of it. And things just sort of took off from there. Anna was starting her company at that time. At the time, it was called Latina Bloggers Connect. And she was doing it on her own. And she needed help. And I was still trying to figure out this Los Angeles art scene. Like, I did acting for a few years. I was still in the museum field. My son was smaller. And, like, I was like, what can I do here? It's not New York. So I have to create a different path completely for myself, and not the New York years, they're gone, So that's how it started. Like, I started helping her, and it was all brand new to me. Everything was brand new to me, because even though I did all of this museum work, the museum pace was much slower. We didn't have the social media tools at the time when I was working at the museum. Everything was like, I call it guerrilla style. Like, we literally did things on foot. Like, I literally went to schools and to events and places to promote the Bronx Museum's programming. I mean, it was all on foot. And so going into this blogging industry was all brand new to me. So that's the beginning of it.
Before we get hear more about the Latina Bloggers Connect and the WeAllGrow Latina journey, I wanted to ask you, Rachel, to discuss a little bit more about how you were able to take that interest and that passion for visual communications into a career. Because oftentimes what happens, I know, we have lots of talented people, particularly that have that artistic persuasion, whether they're painters or, just in that visual communications that you were referring to. And a lot of times they feel very stuck in terms of figuring out a way to monetize and really make those skills a career. They many times feel like they're sort of destined to be starving artists the rest of their life. So can you talk a little bit about how you were able to develop a career and feel comfortable moving forward and transit and developing your skill set. So not only develop your skills in those areas, but also to a real a career.
When I was at the School of Visual Arts, that's one thing we always talked about. Like, what are we going to do with this? I studied illustration, and illustration was changing, and the younger students were studying Photoshop, and I studied oil painting. I tried Photoshop. It just didn't stick with me to paint on Photoshop. It was just like, what is this? Like, I need paint. I need to smell the fumes and all the bad stuff. It felt great.
You can tell you're from the Bronx.
Yeah. A little turpentine.
Hey, look. Anyway.
So this Photoshop stuff just didn't click with me. So my mom was the one, my mom, very pragmatic, she's a psychologist. Everything with my mother is like, plan B, education, academics. So she even was like, I'm not supporting a starving artist daughter. And she encouraged me to study arts education along with it so that I had something that I was able to do in addition to my artwork. And for me, that was the best path. I tried teaching in schools. That wasn't really my thing either. So when I went into the museum world, I found my place because it's much easier for me to work with different groups all of the time as opposed to going in and following up with a classroom throughout the year. So I ended up just having to figure out what worked for me at the time and what I was comfortable with. And for whatever reason, I was pretty good at interpreting art and talking about art and working with children and helping them find the connection in the art piece, because art can be so intimidating, especially when you're a kid and you're looking at art pieces that have nothing to do with your life. So interpreting that for the kids and working with the kids and helping them develop language skills, that was something that I was really, really passionate about for a really long time. So that's where I found, a career in that. As far as painting goes, I had friends who were extraordinary painters. They were able to do it, but they also went through their years of struggle trying to figure out. They had corporate jobs. It is not an easy path. And I think if you continue to go down the path and you continue to explore different avenues as you're doing it, through that path, you might find something that really resonates with you and clicks with you and helps you support your art endeavors, or can connect you with someone or a place that will help you actually make a living with your art. I had no idea I was going to end up in social media. This wasn't a thing when I was in school. I didn't think that it would be a skill set that would be important for what we do today. But had I closed my mind and said, well, I'm not going to start a blog, or I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to, put my artistic views on social media and everything. If I had done that, then I would have closed those doors for myself. And I think that's something that many artists, they do that because they believe in their work. And I totally get that. But you got to sort of leave things a little bit open for opportunities. You may find something that's extraordinary for you.
Yeah, that's very important, and it is about kind of opening your heart and your mind open to these opportunities, and understanding that a lot of times what you're looking for is probably right in front of you. You don't realize it, right? So it's the fact that I didn't
look for this. It was just there, honestly. It really was. I mean, it was a conversation that started on Twitter. I met her in person.
Look at that.
We connected, and then it just sort of took off from there. This was not planned, and I believe that it was because I was open to whatever opportunities could come my way. I was looking at all of the doors as open for me, and I can go through either one. And I think it was perspective that helped me get into this whole new career.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with a good friend of ours that's a photographer. She's an excellent photographer here locally. And, she was basically just saying that, she has a great passion for photography, but it's a grind, right? I mean, a lot of times it's a lot of weddings on the weekends kind of thing. And I said, well, you should think about, don't think about your skill set in your career that narrowly. And I threw out an example. I said, look, and I haven't done the research. I don't know if it would be what she should do, but I said, have you ever thought about like setting up a website where you could provide like stock photo services, because she's taking a lot of distinct kind of photos in the kind of community she lives in. And it just, whether she follows up on that or not is unclear. But my point is that the fact that it was an aha moment for her, because it was just just out of a conversation where we were spitballing basically. it opened up,
Mhm.
and it opened up just like a set of possibilities she had kind of not thought about, or she felt weren't open to her, just because she's like, well, I'm an artist and I'm, a photographer and I take pictures. And I'm like, well, there's a lot of ways to do this and utilize your skills in a way where you could leverage your skills, certainly for more, for bigger and better opportunities. I definitely want to get into the We All Grow Latina journey, and formerly the Latina Bloggers Connect journey, and catch up people to what that's about. Before we get into the next segment, Rachel, why don't you remind people about your blog and where they can find you on social media?
Okay, you can find me at The Art Muse. I'm at theartmuse.me. The Art Muse, I was lucky enough to get the name on all of the social media handles. So if you just look up The Art Muse, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram,
Awesome.
it's all under the same name. And I'm also the social media director for We All Grow Latina. So you can also find us, We All Grow Latina, throughout all of the social media platforms as well.
Very cool. And want to get into that right now because the We All Grow Latina network, I've been following sort of Ana Flores, the founder and CEO's journey, and your journey, Rachel, and your team over there. And it's been so inspiring because you all are providing, in particular, Latinas, content creators, a platform to not only, have a community of like-minded Latinas who they can share and support each other in their own careers and content journeys, but really sort of creating platforms so that people can begin and grow their online businesses and and these business opportunities. So why don't we start with what is We All Grow Latina, and not everyone listening may be familiar with it, and we know there's been a sort of an adjustment to the brand recently. So why don't you explain, Rachel, first, what is We All Grow Latina, and kind of how we got here today with that platform.
Okay, so let me rewind a little bit. So We All Grow Latina started off as Latina Bloggers Connect in 2010, and it was Ana Flores' vision to connect Latina influencers at the time, bloggers, with brands. She was seeing that it was happening for the general market and felt, hey, it was time for it to be something that was happening for the Latino community, the Latina community online. So she comes from a different background than I do, and had a little bit more know-how and skill set to be able to put this together. She was a producer, so this came a little bit more naturally for her to put together, which I feel is a very important thing, because this isn't something you can just like say, hey, I'm just going to do this and that's that. This requires a tremendous amount of work and vision, strategy, organization, coordination, everything to put it together, because you're working with major brands, you're working with corporations that have been around for a long time, and introducing them to an entirely new concept, which is not an easy thing to do. So she was very good at doing that. And so the company grew. She hired me, then she hired, she's now project manager, Lydia. And we were just kind of starting from the beginning, figuring out things, everything from like, how are we organizing this through Excel sheets? We've got this new campaign going on. We're executing things and starting new ones. It was a huge learning process for us all. And when we work with bloggers today, it's the same thing. We tell them, like, this whole thing that you're going into, it requires a huge learning process that you have to go through before you get to where you want to be. We went through it through We All Grow. So it was Latina Bloggers Connect. And then after a few years where things started like really just going on a really nice path, and we were developing a larger clientele, and we were hiring staff, and Latinas Online were just creating amazing stories and doing extraordinary work with the brands, and just everything that Anna visioned that it would be, pretty much, that we could do, and changing the stories and the perception of Latinos and Latinas online, which is something I feel that we are a big part of. When things started getting a little bit like, okay, so what do we do now? Anna wanted to really bring this community together, because up until that point, everything was digital. And there was a lot of power in meeting everybody in person and traveling to conferences and seeing the community and coming together. It kind of like made all of that hard work it was like the reward, to see all of the growth and to be with everybody in person. So she started We All Grow Summit. So WeAllGrow Summit started off in Long Beach at my hotel, which is like a gorgeous hotel. And we had 250 attendees for the first one in 2015. And it was like, wow, it was like that aha moment, you know, that it was like the baby was born. We're like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. So we couldn't just leave it at that, you know? So she decided, like, we're going to have another summit, and the summit's going to have another baby, and that's going to be cities. And in cities, we're going to be able to travel around the country and bring together the Latinos from Florida, from, you know, New York, wherever we decide to go next, which I can't say. Because Latinos, even throughout the United States, I mean, we all have a connection with language and culture, but we're all very different as well. So that's kind of like how things started merging into WeAllGrow Latina, because people started recognizing WeAllGrow more than Latina Bloggers Connect. And now we're not just bloggers, we're also YouTubers, we're influencers in so many different ways. And so we decided, you know, hey, let's figure out a way where we can bring it together. So that's where WeAllGrow Latina was born. We had a whole bunch of other names. We were going back and forth, and we were just like, let's just stick with WeAllGrow. And that's pretty much what happened. So we put everything together. We had different social media accounts, which was getting a little bit challenging because I felt like I was repeating messaging and things like that. And I said, you know, we're just one big company, you know, online. Let's just do it that way. And that's how the whole thing started. We have a graphic designer that works with us, and she put together the website. It was all just kind of like a passion project at first, like, oh my gosh, we're going to do this. This is, you know, this incredible step within the company. And that's how it started. And we just rebranded the whole thing. And we're so excited and happy that we did it.
Yeah, Rachel, we'll have to have you back because the branding and rebranding process that you all have gone through is a whole other conversation. And I'm sure there's a lot of content creators out there that would be curious about more details around it. But obviously, but again, that's a whole other conversation. But but the transition, and you're still in that transition. I mean, I know the announcement wasn't too long ago, maybe. So for people that are bloggers or Latinas that are social media content creators, and if they're interested in being part of your network, do they have to have a certain audience level? Are you looking for specific types of content creators? What are some of the criteria that you all have developed for people to be part of your network?
If you have to have at least, you know, some sort of a platform, whether it's YouTube or a blog. We're not looking at numbers right now. If you are starting out, we have a sign up on the website, weallgrowlatina.com, and then you can join us and you can sign up there. And you will receive a weekly newsletter, and in the newsletter it has opportunities for campaigns. It also has lots of information for YouTube. Well, we're rebranded the website. We need to update it, but we do write a lot of content for bloggers who are starting out and things like that, which will be updated on the blog soon. But you will get the information. You will become part of the community. We have a private Facebook group for those who are signed up with us so they can ask any questions. You know, a lot of them DM me and they ask me questions. We try our best to make ourselves available to help anybody who wants to start in this industry. So there is no criteria. The criteria comes in when you're working with brands already. And at that point, we're working with the brands to come up with the strategy and what influencers are going to be hired. So it is sort of you know, they may want to see certain numbers or the numbers that would be the total end. So it doesn't have to necessarily be that one blogger's numbers, but like the numbers of everybody put together. So that gives us an opportunity to put in a blogger that may be new and doesn't have the numbers, because we can average it out in the end and say, well, this is what the reach will be with, you know, these 15 hired influencers. So we do always our best, try to make it work so that we can bring in newer, fresh faces, because we see there's so many new influencers now, so many new bloggers creating beautiful work, and nothing brings us more joy than to be able to say, hey, she is like on it. We love her style. Let's bring her on. The blogger's passion shows through their work, and we feel that, and we want to support them when we see that.
lay out for people, give people an example of the type of campaign. So what that would entail for a blogger. So there's a campaign and they're looking for content creators that are that are in a certain genre, a certain category, and then walk people through kind of what we're talking about.
Okay, so if you're starting off new and then you sign up with us and we reach out to you and we say, hey, you've been accepted to, participate in this food campaign. You have to create a recipe. You have to do 2 tweets, a Facebook update, and a blog post of, approximately 400 words with 2 images and an original recipe that was from Abuela. So, we might have something like that. What the bloggers then need to do is to make sure that they follow everything, because I think there's a very casual approach a lot of times to blogging. And one thing that we highly suggest is that you treat it as professional as possible, like any other job. Because these are going to huge companies and they are looking at this, they're investing in you and they really want to work and collaborate with you. They've approved this list of women that they want to work with. So they're really, really looking forward to the content that the bloggers are going to put out. So we have everything organized in that, you submit your links and we check everything and we have a deadline. You work directly through us anyway, you work directly with a project manager who's there to answer your questions and help you throughout the whole process, especially if you're new. So there's never there's not like any kind of lack of communication or anything. We're extremely professional with everything because we really want to make sure that our best content is out there and we know that these bloggers can do it. So, that's pretty much what you would expect. And then you put your stuff out there and, we help you promote it. We continue with the process. I go through the links and I look at everyone's work and I make sure that they get their airplay and that everybody knows who they are. So it's all a collaborative effort to make it a very successful campaign. And that blogger is a very important piece of the puzzle. So that's pretty much the kind of basics of how something like that would work. And it's a great way to develop relationships with other bloggers, to develop with the brand, to develop with the network that you're working with. And you get paid for it, and then you can, your professionalism will be remembered, your work will be remembered, and more opportunities will come from that.
This is a great example of, us really taking control of our content, controlling our messaging, controlling how we organize ourselves online, and really creating a very influential independent media company and business that allows, in this case, Latinas to express themselves in an authentic way. And also be able to, get compensated for the content they're creating. So I think it's so exciting, and we need about 27 networks like this, to cover all the different types of content that our community is creating around the country and around the world. And I'm just really excited about what you all have accomplished here, and what is more to come for you. What's a lesson from the We All Grow Latina experience related to this journey that you've gone with Anna and your team that you'd like to share with our audience?
So one thing that I notice, especially with anybody who is new to the online space and they want to create something online, is that they're already talking about monetization before they even started. And I went off talking about the beginning to the end because I really wanted to make the point that even for me, coming in from a totally different career, that it was a process of learning that I had to go through as well. I didn't just step into this and just, all of a sudden, like, this is what's going to happen, set the path for myself and say, this is where I want to be in a year. I didn't go into it with that. I had to go into it and wear many hats, learn many different skill sets, because when you decide to do this, you do have to learn how to do marketing. You have to learn how to be your own assistant, pretty much your own administrative person. You're learning a tremendous amount of things that maybe the job you had didn't prepare you for this. And you're going to make mistakes. Nothing is going to be perfect. Some rewards, some fails, and you're going to have to go through all of that and accept that that's part of what this is. Before you can get to the place where you're like, I'm going to make this money off of it. It's important to go through all of these steps. It's important to continue to produce content of your own, continue to keep things. The more love and TLC that you give your brand and your social media, people are going to feel that. And you have to do that first before you can talk about the money you want to make or the brands you want to work with. So I think that's really important. You definitely want to stay on that path where you're thinking, like, I want to make something out of this, but really that has to come from first doing that groundwork. And I don't know if this answers your question, but I know that this is something that we've seen, and it's one of the things for WeAllGrow Summit and cities that we think about. And it's just like kind of going back and continue to tap into yourself and why you want to do this, and go into your authentic self and really put those stories out there. The other stuff will come. It will come once you put your energy out to the universe. And I hate to sound all like a mystic or whatever, but it is true. It will come back to you. But if you're only thinking about that one path of money, 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 you may end up making some really bad financial decisions, and you may end up, not getting yourself an audience because you're not speaking to them, so that's pretty much one of the things that I learned, and I continue to tell bloggers who come to me and they're like, I want to do affiliates. I'm like, well, you don't even have a blog post up yet, and you haven't developed a readership. You're not going to make any money off of affiliate links. So you need to just right now start with building your work and your brand and doing the work. And then you can get to that place and you may decide, you know what, I love my blog so much, I don't want to put affiliate links on it, but you have to do the work first.
That's so important, because in the chase for the immediate dollar, it distracts from really the time you need to put in to find your voice, because I'm sure the Art Muse blog is much different than it was 4 years ago, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, because as you develop your content, you're honing your voice. When I started doing this show, my work primarily has been in politics, and I do some political stuff on here. But when I started the podcast, I thought it would be a political show. But then when I opened my mouth and I started having conversations with friends and allies and folks like yourself, Rachel, that I wanted people to hear about their stories, and the fact that, yes, if you really go for it in life, you could really live your life, not the one your mom wanted, or the one you're assumed to have, or the one that you're too scared to not have. And so so the show morphed into a conversations really about sort of personal development on our own terms and from our own perspective. So it's really important that as you develop your voice and you focus on that, then the other things, when it relates to monetization and will come into play. Because when you're trying to chase the money, it's first of all, there won't be that much available, because your audience and your reach will be very limited, and then you'll be spending a lot of time doing things like random affiliate links and Google AdSense and things that don't really generate much money anyway, and are not really why you got into this in the first place. And so one of the great things about your network is that you're able to create content creators are actually able to focus on what they're passionate about, while being compensated, and also being part of a network like WeAllGrow Latina that is supportive of their individual specific vision within a larger community. So which is why we get attracted to this stuff. I definitely want to talk a little bit about the Art Muse journey, and a little bit about give people a flavor of the kind of content that, as a blogger, that Rachel's providing us. But just also wanted to mention, if you like these conversations with people like Rachel Matos from the WeAllGrow Latina network, as well as the artmuse.me, if you like hearing about from Latina content creators, we've got a wealth of episodes in the archives. If you go to raisedpodcast.com or just check out Raised Podcast, wherever you can download a podcast. People like social media influencers like Lorraine Laddish, Melanie Mendez Gonzalez, the Women of Morado Lens, the Tamarindo podcast crowd, Natasha Otero. Those have been many of the episodes we've had recently. So if you like these conversations with some of the, in particular, Latina social media influencers about their journeys, how they create their content, how they're monetizing, how they're connecting, what's their personal journey that led them to this point. We've had bloggers that shared with me that blogging saved their life, and what doing this kind of work online and sharing with other like-minded people has meant to them. So I know there's a lot of inspirational conversations that are in the archive. So definitely download and subscribe to Raised Podcast. You have a great blog. Really appreciate it, and wanted to first of all give you the opportunity to share with people the kind of a little bit more about the Art Muse and the kind of content that you're sharing there on your own web platform.
Okay, well, the Art Muse definitely speaks to everything that I've just said, because it did start off with one idea. First of all, the name started off as a joke. I have a friend who's very gothic. She's tattooed, she's pierced, she has blue and black hair, and she would kind of joke with me and say, "Oh my gosh, Rachel, you're an art God, you're an art goddess. And we would just laugh because I don't know, that was like some joke she had with me. Every time I said something about art, she would like
That's
say
how
that to me.
nicknames stick, my friend.
So she would say these like dramatic things to me. She's into like dark poetry and stuff like that. So when I was sitting down, I was like, you know what? I'm going to start a blog. I was so inspired by the New York blogger and I missed New York so much. And I'm like, I'm just going to start a blog and see what happens. And I decided to do the art muse, which was, I was like, you know what? I'm not going to be the art god because that's too pretentious. We'll do the art muse. And we're all like, ha 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 ha, and I bought the domain. And it stuck. It wasn't a joke anymore when people started coming up to me like, are you the art muse? And I'm like, oh, yeah. So that's how that started. It wasn't a whole lot of, thinking behind it. It was really something that was like an inside joke. And initially it was going to be me going to art shows and doing sort of my own art critic take on them. And when I started really looking at what the New York art critics were talking about, I felt very much out of the conversation because, you know what, I was also a PTA mom. So art critic life was not necessarily my life anymore. And as I started changing and adapting to this Los Angeles life and everything here, the blog started changing as well. And it started becoming more about a woman who is a mother and who has this background in art and is pursuing this new journey in this new place. And this woman likes clothes and she likes pretty things and photography. And that's what the art muse has become. So that just goes to show you can go in with one idea and then completely end up somewhere else.
It's amazing. Like, that's definitely a theme of this conversation, that it's like, if you just take that step, you don't know, without really knowing where the journey is going to lead you, but you're not going to make it unless you take that first step. And even if you have a goal you think you have in mind, start pursuing. And even if you get diverted, but at least you wouldn't be able to make those adjustments unless you started. So that's great.
And be real with yourself. You got to be honest with yourself. I was not a New York art critic. I mean, as much as I thought I was in my head, I couldn't keep up with the conversations. I'm doing, homework assignments with my then, 8-year-old at night. And that was just not my life. And I just had to say, you know what, this is my life. And this is what I want to talk about. So it changes.
That's right. That's right. That's a really good point. And one blog I did want to mention, if you could elaborate on a little bit, Rachel, is that you had a real good blog post recently about, basically it was a combination of sort of like it's okay to have impulse purchases and the power of pink, wearing pink. And if you could please talk about that, because I always tell the women in my life, so my wife, I said, Michelle, you look fantastic in pink. Why don't you wear more pink? And she's like, it gets cold and we're in the Northeast. And like, I don't know. Yeah, she's like, you don't know anything about fashion or colors. And it's, you don't know what you're supposed to wear certain things in certain seasons. I'm like, yeah, I just know you look really good in pink. You look great anyway, but especially you look great in pink. And so I always tell people that. So anyway, just a little bit about that, about your blog recently about the color pink, Rachel.
Well, I guess for me, it's kind of a big deal because I am a New Yorker from the museum field, and don't we all wear black? We wear like black ponchos with like black frame glasses, We don't wear color. Color is like, for me, it's like a big step every time I buy something with the color pink. That blog post, I mean, I just honestly am just speaking from like whatever experience happened recently, because I can't just have it all be like these art shows. It's just becomes unrelatable. And like I said, the art muse is about just being this woman that just kind of has this, like, I'm like every other woman, So that blog post, my cousin from New York was here, and she's a teenager, and we were shopping for her, and I went in, and I'm the one that ended up with the dress. I saw it, and it was just like this beautiful 90s kind of throwback thing. And the 90s, that was like my decade, 90s and Manhattan School of Visual Arts, that was like the time. So as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have it. It reminds me of that time, I don't know if you have your time, your decade, that's like golden in your head.
Well, I'm an 80s kid, but, I mean, yeah. I wasn't like the most, when you're a nerdy Puerto Rican guy in the hood, it's not like the coolest time of life. So to me, every day is my next best one, to be honest with you. But I'm glad you got to
like the early 90s.
Your 90s.
The early 90s was like the thing for me. Yeah.
Well,
So the
Pink,
dress just kind of brought me
that
back.
was the tail end of the freestyle generation. Pink was in back then, no doubt about it. I remember.
I listened to my freestyle music too.
Absolutely, yeah. You were a little out of diapers there, Rachel, but yeah, you were listening to the older siblings, what they were rocking, no doubt. Well, Rachel Mato,
So yeah, it was just a casual thing, and that's a lot of the blog. There are a lot of casual conversations, but just quickly, the conversation, if you go on my blog post, on my blog, TMJD is the blog post that has gotten the most reach because it talks about a chronic pain disorder that I live with. And a lot of people have reached out to me. So that's also something that I wanted to bring up in your blog, that these stories that are so personal to us, they can really reach people. And the Art Muse, that's not what the Art Muse is about, but it's the one blog post that's gotten the most response. And it's the one where I was just very real and was just like, this is what I'm dealing with. This is what happened to me. And this is how I am coping with it right now. And I still get tons of emails of women asking me tons of questions about this terrible pain disorder. So it's just an example of using your platform to share your story, because there are a lot of people out there who are looking. They're online and they're looking for somebody to make a connection with.
No, Rachel, and I really appreciate your candor with sharing about your medical challenges and just in your social media platforms. You're always very candid about your life and that as a mother and as a professional and all the above, your experiences, and we always appreciate. We appreciate Rachel Matos, and we appreciate the WeAllGrow Latina Network, and I got to give a shout out to the boss, Ana Flores.
Well, I think even if you're not a blogger or you're interested in pursuing any kind of online branding, I think, give us a follow. We'd love to meet you. We are all about just Latina voices online, and give us a follow on social media. If you are a blogger, you can go to our website, WeAllGrowLatina.com. And in there, not only will you find all of the things that we do and the team and the events and everything, but also join the network and get the weekly newsletter and just start immersing yourself into this wonderful network and community. And you can find this anywhere. We are very accessible. As crazy and as hectic things get, we will put things down to answer emails and discuss anything, because we want, as we say, when one grows, we all grow. And this is exactly what we want. We want everybody to feel like they can talk this through with somebody who's been through it. So we're definitely there in that capacity as well. For me, you can follow the Art Muse. Like I said, it's all through social media as the Art Muse. And I too, you can reach out to me if you have any questions about anything. I also am available for that. And we hope that this interview has, opened up the doors for some people to come in and reach out to us and be part of the family.
Thanks for listening to Ray's Talk Show. For more insights from your virtual Big Brother, Ray Collazo, and the Big Brother Ray community, subscribe to Ray's Talk Show at BigBrotherRay.com or on iTunes. To my rays of light, keep shining.